You're going to learn a lot with this next segment. And when the reason why this is so important is because whenever an organization celebrates a centennial, it's a huge deal. You know, with the budget impasse that we saw with the state of Illinois under Bruce Rauner, do you know how many social service agencies went by the wayside? I'm talking service agencies who had been around, like the Lutheran Family Services, that had been around for 172 years. And because of a stupid public policy, when you try to run government by punishing the people that were most vulnerable in this state, was probably one of the most egregious things that has happened in this state's history. But let's talk about the 100 years of Ada S. McKinley and community services. And if you remember, WVON has a strong bond with this agency because when we were on 33rd and Kedzie, our first seniors breakfast was held at Ada S. McKinley on Halsted, and we have been doing them ever since. My guest today is a lovely gentleman. His name is Jamal Malone. He is the CEO. You're the CEO of Ada S. McKinley. Handsome gentleman. And I know your wife and mother is listening, but a handsome gentleman, and he knows about Ada S. McKinley inside and out. Jamal, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much, Perri.
You look excited to be here.
I am. You know, as a listener for your show, very excited to be here and just share what we're doing with the anniversary of Ada S. McKinley founding 1919. This is our 100-year anniversary.
This
our
is
centennial.
Awesome. Right.
And we're doing some great stuff.
So who was Ada S. McKinley?
Ada S. McKinley. Ada Sophia McKinley in 1919.
I love that name, Ada Sophia. That's beautiful. Go ahead.
You know, she had a vision of helping people, in particular black men and families. And this was around the time.
100 years ago?
100 years ago. So think about what was going on during that time.
Riots.
You had I'll get to that. But before the riots, a few years before that, she migrated here with her husband from Texas. Mm-hmm. And as a mother that lost 3 children due to disease down in Texas, they relocated to Chicago. And they were ahead of a couple of things. One, you had a lot of black men moving up from the South.
Right.
At
the
that
Great
time.
Migration.
The Great Migration, moving to Chicago. And then around that time, you had a lot of men going into service.
To World War I.
World War I. And so when the war ended, you still had folks coming up from the South. You had returning veterans coming to Chicago in need of services, housing, employment, all kinds of different things. And Ada would help everybody. Mm-hmm. And so what she did is she ended up starting one of the settlement houses, because if you remember at that time, there were a number of settlement houses.
Like Jane Addams, right?
But they weren't geared towards people that looked like you and I.
Right.
And so you had black men that couldn't find help or services. And so she started the Southside Settlement House.
Wow. I had no idea. That's some real history. She's like an Ida B. Wells.
She is. And so for many years, her legacy has flown under the radar.
Right.
And we want to take advantage of our 100-year anniversary and really acknowledge and bring to light the work that she did and the work that we're still doing through our programs at Ada S. McKinley.
Let's rename Stony Island after Ada S. McKinley.
Sounds good to me. And you mentioned the riots.
Right.
So she played an important role historically with Jane Addams and other folks.
Settlement houses and things.
The leaders of the settlement houses. During the riots, she and 3 other ladies, including Jane Addams, locked arms and walked through the streets and helped to diffuse the situation and helped to create a little bit of peace and calm. Because remember, that was the time of the incident at 29th Street.
Right.
And so she walked the streets arm in arm with Jane Addams and 2 other ladies that founded other settlement homes and really helped to calm the tension and disperse some of the crowds.
Now, Jamal, how long have you been CEO?
5 years.
5 years. Did you know you were there through the budget impasse. Was that a tricky time for you?
Absolutely.
Did you lose sleep?
Well, so
Let's
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to really talk about how I got back to Chicago.
Okay.
Originally, I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Okay. Well, that's still Chicago.
And it counts, right? We're cousins.
Right.
And so there were a lot of things going on just across the country. But my career, I went to Ernst & Young, so I don't have a for-profit background initially.
Okay.
Accounting undergrad, I had folks that helped me go to college. I did Head Start programs as a kid. So a lot of the services that we provide, my mother and our family, we received a lot of those services as well.
Right.
And so coming to Chicago, I chased my wife to Chicago.
Okay.
Caught her here, and that's how we stayed.
Oh, that's cute.
And so what happened was we ended up having an opportunity to move to D.C. For me to help lead another social service agency, a human service agency out that way, and lead and develop some education programs. Right around the time when I was being recruited to come back to Chicago, I looked at it when Ada called through the search firm. I had a couple big concerns. One was the unfunded pension liability.
Right.
And then two, just looking at the budget. Because remember, I have an accounting background. So the first thing I said is, well, show me the numbers.
Right.
And I think it was good that coming in at the time I came in the September before the budget crisis.
Okay.
And we really battened the hatches and really prepared for it programmatically.
Prepared for it programmatically. That's what you did.
Yes, and I think that's part of why the board hired me. We've got a great board of directors, a lot of foresight, very, very progressive, and we're a very fiscally strong agency, but we had to make a lot of hard decisions ahead of that in anticipation of the disaster that was coming.
Wow. And that's all because of that great Ernst & Young experience. Thank you so much.
That and chasing my wife to Chicago.
Chasing your wife to Chicago. Okay, now the other thing is there's a lot going on. Now listen to these numbers, guys. Over 70,000 people are served annually at 70 locations. Over 600 persons with disabilities are served. More than 800 children served in their Head Start and early learning programs. More than 1,500 jobs are provided annually outside of their nearly 600 employees serving the community. Over 4,000 mental health crisis interventions annually, and over 70,000 were placed in 400 colleges and universities since the 1960s. That is very impressive. But the one thing that I know that Ada S. McKinley has done that before just about anybody else was they were probably the original interrupters of the pipeline to prison pipeline, which I just think is incredible in itself. When we come back, we're going to find out more about these programs and how Ada's work impacts even people to this day. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And Ada S. McKinley Community Services, Inc. is celebrating 100 years. They are honoring the legacy of Ada S. McKinley and all that they have done. Joining us is CEO Jamal Malone, who chased his wife to Chicago from Detroit. He's a cousin, of course, and with an accounting background, got in front of the crisis that Illinois was facing and where social service agencies have never seen what they had seen before, and he was able to get through that and keep Ada very strong, which it is to this day. And like I said, you were the original, interrupters, that pipeline to prison thing going on. What was the vision? Whose vision was that? And when did it start? Or when did it become apparent that there was a pipeline for African American men to go to prison?
It goes back to Ada S. McKinley and her original vision. Mm-hmm. The services that she provided then are very much in line and consistent with the services that we still provide today.
And the fact that we still need those services is what is so disheartening. We're talking 100 years later.
And, I believe that a lot of time we toss money at a lot of the symptoms, and not to take away from anyone's personal need. Mm-hmm. Everyone has individual needs. But really thinking back to what she originally did, helping men and families, black men and families, in the Bible, it says if you have to bind the strong man if you want to take over the house.
Okay.
And so it was purposeful that she, a black woman, focused on black men. Just think about that for a minute.
That's right.
Think about the vision that she had in order to set up and see the need for all of the services. And our mission and the work that we do, that work of changing lives, it still carries on today. So when you think about pipeline to prison, systemically and socioeconomically, a lot of those same issues still hold true. Think about young men out of the 76,000 people that are in jail right now in Illinois. And I say Illinois because a lot of times there are people from our community, a majority, that are put into other communities to employ those communities where those factory jobs or those plants have closed. Those prisons are now the primary economic drivers. The engines for those communities. And so what that means is, let's work backwards, right? Walk this thing backwards. If you have 70% of the prison population, men of color, right, out of the 76,000.
Let's not use that men of color thing anymore. Let's just concentrate on black people.
All right, so over 50% black, right? 14% Hispanic, 50% black, so half. Walking backwards. How did that come about? So when you think about whether or not kids go to college or even graduate from high school, that's one of the primary indicators.
45% of kids, black men 18 to 24, are not working or are not in school.
So walk backwards from that. How many kids get suspended in high school?
And grammar school as early as 5, 6 years old.
Keep walking backwards. That ties directly to literacy, right? When you're in the third grade, are you at grade level for reading? If you're not, higher probability you'll be suspended, higher probability you won't graduate from high school. Keep walking backwards. This gets you to preschool. How many kids show up in kindergarten ready and prepared to read and in a stable home environment? Keep going backwards and then overlay this with our mental health services that we provide, crisis intervention, outpatient clinics. And so we provide services at every step along the way to counteract all of those different detrimental issues in order to address the problems.
Let's talk about mental health. That's a big issue and probably some of the hardest people to reach to talk about mental health are African American men. And you know, when the city closed all of its mental health clinics, you must have picked up a lot of slack, a lot of that.
Oh, we're beyond capacity. So we provide mental health services for people of all ages, but we actually have a high concentration of young people. And the two
Between
programs.
What ages?
It could be elementary school to 22 years old. And so,
this could be because of the trauma that they've experienced throughout their lives.
Exactly.
And all of that.
Think about that word trauma. From a trauma standpoint, what two types of cards are found in the CVS's and the Walgreens sold in bulk in our CVS stores and Walgreens right now? Condolences and thank you cards. I buy condolence cards, sympathy cards in bulk and keep them in my car. I go to so many funerals. And so when you think about the trauma.
Oh, Jamal, that's awful.
When you think about the trauma that is just every day and the norm for so many kids, they don't even know that they're experiencing trauma right now, kids and adults.
I had a young lady on the show with us yesterday who was shot 3 times. Her brother was killed, and this all happened on the same day. And she was one of the nicest young ladies I'd ever met in my life. I just couldn't believe she's in an alternative school. So as we celebrate the 100, and thank you so much for what you brought to us today with this segment, what would you like us to do to support Ada S. McKinley? And I understand that you are looking for individuals who have benefited from the services of Ada S. McKinley and even those people that have worked with you in the past.
Yeah, so we've kicked off our I Am Ada campaign. We really want to reconnect with folks that are alumni or friends and family, people that have received just help, and people whose lives that we've changed through Ada S. McKinley. So 2 things, a call to action. The first is we want to hear your stories. Call the station, right? Call now, call later today. We're going to get a recording of all of your personal stories so that we can share with others. So if you're an alumni.
So are you working with WVON on this for us to that we're going to set up a line?
Yes.
We're going to set up a line, and then you guys our listeners can share their stories.
Yep, we want to hear if you're an alumni. Many of you know A.S. McKinley from Silas Purnell.
Of course.
Right? How many kids did we help go to college? Over 70,000?
I would even say even more than that because they went to college, their siblings went to college.
And so when you think about even at WVON, we've got, Terry.
Right, Terry Bishop.
We've got other folks here at the studio that are alumni and that we've helped go to college. So think about the power if we can reconnect with our alumni base and our network base, people that have received services, whether it be college placement or our Head Start programs, et cetera, et cetera. You asked a question about mental health. We're one of the primary mental health crisis intervention services in the city, south side of Chicago. What does that mean? That means if you're at a Chicago public school or McDonald's or, a kid walking down the street, we help deflect them either getting admitted to the emergency room because of a mental health incident or event or them going to jail. So, 67% deflection rate.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So if you have a family member that is in distress, they can call Ada S. McKinley and seek for what kind of services you can provide for them.
Absolutely, especially depending on specific geographies, because we have very designated geographies.
And how many sites do you have?
So that's a community-based program. So it could be at a McDonald's, on 63rd and whatever. So it doesn't matter. That's community-based. Our two outpatient clinics, we have one on 63rd and then one on 71st over in the California Western area.
All right. Jamal, it's been my pleasure. Give the telephone number people need to call or the website.
Call to action, the second thing.
Right.
In addition to calling in to share your story, we want you to visit our website, adasmckinley.org, ADASMCKINLEY.org. And then we want to connect with you. So the easiest way to do that is make a financial contribution, whatever your heart desires, and allow us to collect your information so that we can stay in contact with you.
Right.
Hashtag ADA100.
All right.
We've got a bunch of events. Check out Eventbrite. Hashtag ADA100. It'll pull up the next 3 events that we have for this year. Thank you so much, Perri.
You want me to be at some of these events?
Absolutely.
You want me to MC some of these events?
We can talk about it.
Hey, that's all I'm saying. If you don't promote yourself, who's going to promote you? All right, then. It is 11:30. It was a pleasure. And give a shout out to your...
Happy Mother's Day. So
to whom?
Sheila McIntyre, my mother. She's listening right now. Letitia Malone, my wife. Two women of why I'm here. My mom, why I'm here in the world. And Letitia, why I'm here in Chicago.
All right, then. I love that. And as soon as we get off the air, I really want to see a picture of this family.